Welcome to another episode of the Tough Stuff Podcast.
Be sure to like, love, share, or subscribe wherever you may be watching or listening because we believe God wants to bring encouragement and hope through these stories. What's going on, Tough Stuff?
Hey.
How you guys doing today? Hopefully it is a great day for you.
Hopefully so.
It's a splendid, it's not Friday. That definitely changes my perspective.
Today is not Friday, but when they listen to this, it will be Friday.
I know, I'm talking about me. I was going into today thinking
you were
it was
excited,
Friday,
okay.
the weekend, and now I've just
not.
realized here on the camera that it's not.
I'm so sorry.
Thursdays are good.
Thursdays are good. And you know what? This is episode 19.
19.
Like we're one away from 20. I know everybody's probably like, why are they so shocked? But I guess if you know us, like we...
if you know me at all, I'm not consistent with anything.
We are just your average, spontaneous, adventurous, kind of procrastinating couple.
Yeah.
Don't you think?
Big time procrastinating, very spontaneous.
But not with this.
Like I think we've talked about this on here before. Like this is you and Jesus are the most consistent things I've ever had in my life.
So be Jesus and the Tough Stuff Podcast.
Tough Stuff is inching away at it. You know, people make fun of me all the time because I've always got a different hairstyle. And honestly...
Well, you know what's so funny?
What? Tell me.
Wait, Bruno's like really distracted me. Can you get that from him?
This is life, Tough Stuff. This is life.
You know what I was thinking about when I was editing last week's episode, which, by the way, D.
Oh, so good. Wild.
I am so thrilled that I get to watch like the behind the scenes of some of these episodes because I'm talking to people about like girly things, and then you're like, yeah, I got a guy, he's gonna come, and I'm behind the camera and I'm like just listening, and he's like, yeah, I was in a gang and like all this stuff, and it's just very different than what I'm used to.
The funniest thing was like. He ends up texting me after like a couple times, like, man, I forgot to talk about that time I almost died because I got stabbed 5 times. Man, I should have told him about that time I robbed a bank, And like the story
to me,
just goes
if
on.
you are like feeling that like shock of like, oh my gosh, then I know it is an intense storyline because that's how I feel about you. Like we'll be driving down the road and you're like, that's where I saw my first murder.
How did we get here from talking about my haircut?
Oh, that's what I was going to say. When I was editing, last week's episode, I, we have like our little intro picture, and then it goes like directly into the video.
Which you do such a great job at. Just so you guys know, I don't do any of the editing smart people stuff.
You don't.
Allison does it all.
It's okay.
She lets me know too, so I wanted to let you know.
It's fine. But I was laughing when I was editing it because you are like so clean, like you have no facial hair hardly, and your hair is short on our like podcast
like the thumbnail
intro, yeah. And so it's literally like, welcome to another episode of the Tough Stuff Podcast.
Bam, out of the woods.
And then it's like you, and you're like, hey everybody, and it's like you have a full beard, your hair is long, and I just thought, that is Chris. Leave it to you that you would be that drastically different.
Somebody made the comment the other day that like, what's wrong with you? You just can't decide which hairstyle you like. And the truth is I have decided which one I like. I like all of them.
You like all of them.
So
and
I do all of them at different times. I don't understand why it's so hard for people to wrap their mind around that.
I don't know. I think that's like a level of freedom that most of us aren't used to having.
Yeah.
Like, I remember even early on in our marriage feeling like, why are you doing all these things? Like, why do you change everything so often? But that's who you are. And
do you remember the conversations we've had? I don't know if we talked about this on here, So like when we first got married, and just so you guys know, like I used to have 1.5 holes in my ears. I've lived all over the place. Like I have been like, I've had gold teeth, I've had mohawks, I've sagged my pants, I've worn girls' pants before skinny pants were around. I've done it all, you know?
And I'm as like even keel as it gets. Like nothing about me has really changed since I was in like 8th grade.
You're kind of white bread on paper.
Yeah. Whatever that means.
Like private school, like, you know, Baton Rouge, I don't know, whatever.
Is
But,
that
like,
what we're called?
We get married.
Wait,
Bland.
I'm
Oatmeal.
bland?
You're not now. I said on paper.
On paper. Okay. I still don't understand. Anyway.
Like you're pretty, like all of my friends that I hang out with, you'd be like, man, that guy's really weird.
Yes.
And it'd be like, because it's a guy with like a black fingernail and a nose ring. When we got married, I had my conch still pierced. I think I might have earrings too and a nose ring. And I don't know if we got married. I think we were just seriously dating at that time. And do you remember, like, over time, you'd be like, you know, I don't really like those earrings. And I'd take them out. And, like, 2 months later, you'd be like, yeah, I don't really think I, like, feel the nose ring. You were, like, little by little.
I was so controlling back then, you know? It wasn't...
I wasn't trying to get to that. I wasn't trying to jump to the
No,
chase.
but, you know, looking back, it's like, man, you should have been able to just be yourself,
Yeah,
you know?
I should have.
You should have. I'm sorry.
But, I mean, that was
I feel like I took that from you.
That was my fault in not knowing who I truly was in the first place. We're really getting into what we wanted to talk about organically. We didn't even do these funny questions we thought about doing.
We can
and
still do
stuff.
them. I think they're funny. But, you know, like looking back, I don't know, like if I could like dissect why I was so uncertain about all of those things, I think it's because it was so different than not only what I was used to, but like everyone that I grew up around. So you were like, just, I don't want to say.
You didn't grow up around any subculture people.
No.
Yeah.
I went to private school from kindergarten to 12th grade. And so I think in a way I was like, so that like you embodied such a foreign thing to me that I felt in some way I had to control things in order to feel like I had control. Otherwise, it would have been like a totally foreign and new adventure, which it was. And which is what I originally fell in love with you. Yeah.
I think it's every cycle, like, and not even to get like all spiritual or biblical
It's the Tough Stuff
scholarish.
podcast. It's about God.
But like, you know, even in the Bible, it tells you like from the curse, Adam and Eve, it tells you, you know, your desire will be for your husband. And what that Hebrew really means is your desire will be to control your husband. And it's all, I mean, we're all scarred and marred with insecurity from the fall of man. You know, we want to try to control things we don't understand. But I do see this regular cycle, and it probably happens vice versa too with men and women. But, you know, we are uncomfortable with what we don't understand.
Yes.
Or we just see
That's
a
a
lot
cultural
of guys,
thing, though.
I see over and over time where a lot of people try to control their spouse and honestly make them into themselves in a sense. But then, you know, 20 years down the road, you end up with one spouse who is begrudged or resentful because he's given up or she's given up. I'll make sure I keep this gender neutral.
Yeah,
They've given up all of themselves, but then you end up with the other spouse who looks at their spouse and doesn't even have that same spark or love for them because they've changed everything that they fell in love with to that person in the first place.
Yes.
And it happens so often.
Yes. And it's so, it's not like it's this like blatant decision that we make to control one another. It's like out of survival or fear or, you know, all these things, we put on this nature of control that can feel so normal in a way because you can almost justify it, you know, and so you can almost feel good about yourself and feel like it's good. But then, you know, on this side of all of that in our journey, I'm like, what was I like? Like I wanted to marry, like I was trying to make you like white bread Chris.
Did you use white bread?
Well, you used it for me, and I'm like, is that what I was trying to do? Is to make you white bread Chris?
Trying to turn me into your dad?
I love my
your
dad.
dad. I love your dad. I'm just saying, me and your dad are very different
Y'all are
people.
very, very different. But y'all have a lot of similarities.
Yeah, your dad is, he's not white bread. Your dad's got adventure inside of him.
He has, does white bread mean not having adventure?
I mean, yeah, just kind of that straight 9 to 5.
I need to like understand this terminology. Like I feel like
I think it really stemmed from a friend of mine who was talking about his kids, and he said one of his kids is white milk and one of his kids is chocolate milk. And it was the most identifying thing for their personality.
What does that mean?
I know Chad's probably watching this right now, but one of his kids is very like straight-laced, quiet, studious, like kind of geeky, dorky. And his other son is like wilding out, you know, skateboards, like craziness, loud music.
So if I'm white, if I was white bread, what are you?
I'm just saying, there's nothing on. I don't even know what I am in bread, milk, or race. I thought I started finally figuring it out. Now I'm turning white, you know. But like, if you put you on paper.
Okay.
There is nothing out of your resume or out of your who you are on paper that would say like, oh, she'll probably have a tattoo or a nose ring, or like do something that's out of the norm.
Yeah, you're right.
You know?
So totally right.
Yeah.
But I don't understand how that equals bread.
I don't either. It's just funny. See what I'm saying? You don't even get my humor.
I'm so literal. I'm like, how does that equal white bread?
So many times how many times have you told me in our marriage, I don't like your jokes?
Yeah, your jokes. Like, they're not jokes.
I like jokes that are not jokes. That are like...
Yeah, but when you're telling your wife
funny,
jokes that are not jokes, it makes your wife feel like you're really not joking. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, sometimes it probably is because... No, I don't want to say that.
I would say that I've gotten really good at your understanding your jokes.
Oh, you have? Yeah, we've come a long way, period.
Yeah, we have.
Thinking about where we are now, and...
You got a stain on your shirt.
I know, that's why I came on this side. I like this shirt, though.
What happened?
Maybe you should spray and shout me. Whatever it's called. This is my good side.
I just noticed. I'm like, but with you, it's like you could have done that intentionally.
Yeah, I would have put more stains on the shirt, though.
Oh,
one
okay.
stain's like not enough to like be a thing, you know. One stain's just an accident. So we've just like, I just think about we live, which I think it's so different from where we came, but we live 2 separate lives now.
Different.
And honestly, whenever we first got married, I still didn't believe like that was the way for a healthy marriage and it wasn't even out of our unhealth. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't know, we're just in a different place, and it's very free and very fun.
Well, I'll say, like, count the cost of that, because we've been married for 10 years, and a lot of those years were very hard, and we had to put in a lot of work.
By a lot, you mean like 8?
8 out of 10.
80%.
We always had fun,
Yeah.
but we were just at odds. But, the cost has been, having to look within and say, hey, I'm controlling, and why? Mm-hmm. Or having to look in and, whatever you say to yourself.
What do I say to myself?
I don't know. You're you. Tell us.
What do you think I say to myself?
I don't know. Don't put me on the spot.
We've been forged by fire.
Yeah.
If I think of any metaphor for the verse where it talks about like a silver or goldsmith heating up the thing so the impurities rise to the top, that has been our marriage. Except it's been like the goldsmith doing that and like shaking it up every couple minutes and hitting it with a hammer.
I feel like we're making us sound like we were just flat out miserable, which we kind of were. But if you saw us in public, we genuinely like enjoyed ourselves.
Oh, yeah.
So it's not to say that we were like for 8 years living in this just like separated
No, I feel like we've
situation.
always known how to enjoy life. Mm-hmm. We just didn't know how to coexist in this joyous life. We both wanted to enjoy life so much that our enjoying of life butted with each other in ways.
Yeah.
You know? And we're so different. Remember, we talked about this before, D, like, Lord, just bless this so different couple that I don't really know how they ended up together.
But, I like, we've had to overcome, our own, like, not communicated expectations of what the other person should do. Like we've talked about this before, you're going to clean the house differently than me. And you've had to overcome, like, she's different than me.
Oh, yeah, big time.
And, yeah.
I mean, I wanted to say this earlier, and this didn't even relate to this, but I just love this quote, is that everybody truly is doing the best that they can with what they've been given. A lot of people have been given misconstrued perceptions of love, of relationships and whatnot. But yeah, everybody does what they do because they literally think it's the best way to do it.
Yes.
That's why they do it that way.
Yes.
But then when you have two people who do things a certain way because they think it's the best way to possibly do it, and typically they believe it's the only way to do it because that's the way your mama did it, or that's the way you saw it done, or whatever it might be. And it just collides, opposites attract and then they attack.
Well, it's like, then you have to humble yourselves and find the happy medium. But how do you do that when you're both headstrong? And then for me, my past relationships bleeding into our marriage and like all the fears that I got from that was headstrong too. Like, it was like, I don't know if the real me really got to come out until the last year or so. But that's,
we would get glimpses of you here
and
even
there. and same with you. I don't think the real you. I think this you is the most you that you've ever been.
I don't know whether to be like offended or excited.
Why would you be offended?
No, I'm joking. I'm good.
Like, we're both. I think it's because
we're able to coexist. We're able to be who we want to be together.
Yes.
And separate.
Yes.
And love each other for it.
Well, I just remember being so, I know for me, with my past and all of my relationships before you, I dealt with, and I know I talked about this in other episodes, I dealt with so much betrayal. And so I think that I came into our marriage with like this almost like relational PTSD, where I was just anxious and terrified every day, all day, that you were going to cheat on me and that I was going to lose you, and that we were going to, like, it's almost like this fear of abandonment, fear of betrayal, rejection. And those are the things that like ran our marriage for a long time because I didn't have a grasp on them. They had a grasp on me. They were controlling me. And, that's so, what I think is happening in so many marriages is people have individual trauma or individual experiences that are undealt with, that are dictating and ruling their relationships.
If you don't deal with it, it'll
deal with you and your relationships.
Yeah.
And so, I think for me, I can just remember, gosh, just that insecurity of, he's going to cheat on me. He's going to like every time you would like even have a conversation with another girl or another woman, like all of these irrational thoughts would just like flood my brain. And remember, I would like text you because for the longest time, it came in stages where I started learning how to like communicate about it, and then how to, because it was so hard. I
remember at one point we were like, maybe you don't need to communicate about it every time. Like, I can't live. Like, it's good that you're feeling yourself, but you don't need to talk about it every time.
Well,
just deal with it sometimes.
That level of fear and anxiety, it can be so like have a hold on you.
I remember it would like you would be paralyzed
with fear,
and it was not logical at all. And I would try to make. I remember so many times trying to make it logical. The first time I remember it ever kind of rearing its head, we were at Walmart. And there was this lady that I think she worked at Walmart. She was rather large, and by rather large, I mean large. And she was older, like opposite of what I would ever like find appealing or anything like that. And she had like bent over or something, and I made some comment which was just immature and stupid. I would never make a comment about a person like that again. But I made some comment about her butt or how big, whatever. And I remember you like didn't laugh. You like shut up, like didn't say anything.
Oh,
and then like I was like,
down.
what is going on? And you were like, I just don't understand why you were looking at that girl. And I was like, what?
Well, it's like I was so afraid. I don't know. It was like the most, like, and I know so many people struggle in this way. It was the most irrational fears, but they like
Felt so real.
And they ruled.
Yeah.
Like I knew they were irrational at times, not all the time, but at times. And yet I would still like fall for it or believe it or, and then act on it. And so what acting on it would be like me texting you and being like, are you really talking to that girl? And it's like our secretary at work, like our front desk lady, or like, it'd be.
Sure, I've been up there for a little while.
Yeah. Are you done talking? And I just look back and, I'm so thankful that, there's been a lot of healing in that place, because that is a very discouraging place to live. But I just think back on that time. I can remember when we worked at the Dream Center for HP Serve, and we both worked for Miss Alice Cole.
Same organization, but different.
Same organization, different sectors.
Grants.
I worked on the bottom floor of the building. You worked on the top floor of the building, and part of.
I didn't even really work in the building.
Oh yeah.
I worked in the boys' home.
I wish we could bring
we would come
Miss
by.
Alice on to like discuss this, because she was there for this. But it was a day, and this was every day. One way that I would control you was by texting you like 24/7. So if you were responding back to me 24/7, then I knew I had some level of control. Like I knew where you were, I knew what you were doing, all this stuff. And so, I don't know,
You would almost guilt trip me almost every day to come up to the Dream Center with the boys.
Yeah.
That I needed to come do something.
I did.
And I kind of remember one in particular moment where she like took notice of it and was like, this is not right.
Well, she called me into her office, and she was like, okay, you have got to stop texting him. She said so many other amazing things, and that's why she's who she is in my life today. But she definitely called that out. And it's just interesting to me, like when you're in that kind of cycle of behavior or trauma or triggers or whatever, sometimes all it takes is somebody like snapping you out of it and being like, hey, like, he's your husband, you work for me, he works for me, like you're safe, everything's fine, And so I think when I think about our marriage, and especially the battles that I personally have faced, it is in that lane.
Yeah. Like I feel like, man, that's why I'm so grateful for just people. Or even sometimes it's the presence of God or the word of God. Like it's almost like I see in like a cartoon and he's like whirly bird, clouds of circles, stars over his head. And it only takes like one hit and you're like, oh, I see clearly now,
Well, because, the whole thing about trauma and like, even PTSD and those kind of things, like, and I'm no psychologist, so this is not any type of like, this is kind of my opinion based on what I've learned about myself. But whenever you are operating in a trigger, which is a moment that, for whatever reason, reminds you of something in the past, you are feeling all the feelings that you did back then, and as if it were present.
Not to give you not to cut you off, but the neurological knot. So basically,
Neuro nerd.
I'm a neuro nerd. So trauma actually will create knots in your neuro pathways. And it'll basically create, and I haven't figured out the best way to really like say this, but it'll create almost like a knot or like a bruise. And you've got this bruise around acceptance. Well, you get rejected whenever you're in second grade. I'm talking about my own trauma almost now, not meaning to, but you get rejected in second grade and it hurts so bad and it creates this knot in those neural pathways that make you feel accepted or make you feel loved. But then this knot, well, 5, 10, 16 years later, you'll have another way of not feeling accepted or rejected at some point. And you will feel all of those emotions because of that feeling is trying to go down that same neural pathway, but that knot is still connected to you in second grade. And it'll bring up so many, and this is like physical, like not just, hokey,
no, like
spirit.
I would
this
cry.
Is actually physical.
Yeah.
Like there have been studies where like physically women have recounted abuse they've gone through.
Yes.
And their body will bleed and their body will bruise.
Yes, which I know about through trafficking stuff.
Yeah. It's just such a crazy way that the mind and the body was created.
But if you don't know any of that, you're just operating in this state and it has control over you.
Yeah.
And that's how I lived in our marriage for a long time. And what it did to you was it made you feel hopeless.
The big deal for me was that you came in, I don't know why I keep saying on paper, but you came in with this baggage that was kind of objective. Like it was there. You could write down why you were struggling with what you struggled with, prior relationships and whatnot. And I came in with baggage of my own, which was a lot harder for me to really put my finger on or to figure out the source of. And mine was, I'm kind of hopeless romantic. I love rom-coms, that kind of deal. I thought marriage was going to be, me sweeping you away, and every night is like you walking in white lace and whatever.
Instead, it was me going, "You're going to cheat on me."
But I had these expectations that I came in with, mixed with my own upbringing, which was marriageless, seeing divorce, never seeing somebody operate in the position of a father or a husband. And I remember even in Bible school, like people would ask me what I'm going to do, and I'd be like, I don't know, I just want to be a good father and a good husband. So I came in with almost this unhealthy pressure on being a good husband and a good father, mixed with this expectation of what I thought it was going to be like. And I thought you were just going to fall head over heels because I worked so hard and I did everything I could possibly do. And it was flowers and paintings and poems. And I did not get accepted the way that I thought I would. And for me,
Go on.
it really triggered with me my childhood of growing up without a father figure, growing up not knowing or being taught by any means what it means to be a man or to be a father or to be a husband. So I'm like winging it here. I am making my game plans off of like The Notebook and like other movies, Disney movies I've seen growing up on how to sweep you off your feet, And every time that I would work my tail off in trying to put these things together or whatever it may be, you would get triggered and you would respond out of your trigger. And for me, what it would do was trigger me to make me feel like you're not a good man. You're not a good husband.
Which is all from your childhood.
Enough, which is, the story of my life, of that question, which I think every boy is born with that question inside of him. Am I enough? But most people have fathers and male figures in their life, at least to edify or encourage them that they are, or show them how to be. Wherever I've been winging this thing. I remember our first date we ever went on. I pulled over in this Winn-Dixie right here. I don't know.
I think we did.
And I just sat in the parking lot and I said, God, you've got to show me how to even date a girl. Like, I don't know what I'm doing here.
But see, there's an element to that where you're able to be fully moldable by God when you are coming to Him with that level of nothing. Like, God, can you imagine if we said that in every area of our life? Like, God, you have got to teach me how to do this. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And that's what humility really is. I love the definition I heard not too long ago. The humility is knowing that you're not always right. And that's a hard thing to do in so many areas
Especially
of your life.
marriage.
Yeah. Like, it wasn't that hard for me to do, to say that. When we were in conflict, it was hard for me to say that because you're both, two kids, two kids with injuries that you're trying to fight for survival against each other, thinking the other person's the enemy when really the enemy is this trauma and we need love to heal that, But it's hard to admit that.
Yeah. I just think about so many moments where that took control of me. And it's not like you can choose when you're triggered, if you are not like dealing with it through therapy, or, for me, it was EMDR therapy that really helped. And of course, God can make moves and do miracles and all that too. But you cannot control whenever you are triggered.
Yeah.
Like you cannot control what comes out of your mouth. You cannot control like I would sob crying, which was, something that was familiar to me from back in the day. And so I just think there were so many things that were coming up against us from our pasts that were triggering each other. And we just, we were not even, I feel like we're finally, who we are in our marriage today.
Do you remember our second date to Middendorf?
Yes. I thought that's what you were about to say.
We drove all the way to Middendorf because you had told me it was like this family. This is one of those grand gestures.
It's my favorite restaurant, yeah.
It's one of those grand gestures. You told me you had kind of family history going there.
Oh.
I'm like, I'm going to surprise her. And we just start driving.
Best thin fried catfish.
Which you think about it now, and this is obviously my health perspective, but it's so good because there's almost no fish there. It's just fried batter. It's like eating chips.
I grew up, it doesn't matter why it's so good to me.
But I just remember being on the way home and you just crying the entire way home. And I'm like, what have I done wrong?
I don't know if I even have words for why I was crying.
But that's the trauma. It's opening a door that hadn't been open in a while. And those emotions that we close doors on just flood out. We've had so many good arguments and different times.
We should talk about Miss D's favorite argument
coffee?
The coffee.
I was actually going to talk about the coffee.
Yeah.
I think the coffee is such a good
Do you think
example.
that's our most bizarre argument we've ever had?
No.
What do you think our most bizarre argument?
I tried to think of this a little while ago. I can't think of one, but I know the coffee is not the most bizarre or stupidest, because I know we've had some stupid arguments.
Well, because when you're arguing about, it can start somewhere and then you start playing with each other's triggers, and that's where we escalate.
Oh, one of my favorites is ever we're arguing and I bring up again what was said, and you're like, I don't even remember what was said.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, I know, that's why we're arguing,
Literally, you get to the point where you're like, I don't even know what we're arguing about. Couldn't even tell you.
But I hate you.
It's just, it's so interesting how that is.
Well, the coffee. So this is Sayla, right? Sayla's been born. You're nursing. I was going to say breastfeeding, but I didn't want to say that. You were nursing.
Why? That's a normal term.
I don't know. You were nursing.
It's so weird. You make everything so weird.
That is my humor.
Is it though? Is it humor?
It's my humor to come back and say what I wanted to say anyway without saying it. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, you were breastfeeding, and we're in Walmart, and we're grocery shopping. And typically grocery shopping has always kind of been my thing. See, I'm already starting to frame this thing up to make me look more in the right. That's how evil people are. Grocery shopping has always kind of been my thing.
We should have pulled Miss D and
Walmart
our marriage counselor on this episode.
Miss D said she don't want nothing to do with the podcast.
Oh, Miss D.
We love her, but she does not want to be put on our podcast. I've always grocery shopped. Walmart's my happy place. People that know me, it's been my escape over years.
You have often told me, well, it's because I grew up in Walmart.
I did. I grew up in Walmart in the mall. My mom found my name in the mall. So it's like my comfort, it's my happy place. You can go and just talk to people, and we get in an argument. People at Walmart love me. So we're at Walmart together, which is a pretty rare occurrence for us to all be there. Kids were there.
Oh, don't ever do that.
We're walking through, and which grocery store with kids, I mean, they target children. Everything's got a character on it, man. It's like evil. It's like Elijah's like, oh, I want that. I'm like, dude, that's dish soap. I know, but it's got Spider-Man on it. Like, what are they doing to us? We're there, and we're walking down the coffee aisle. I'm passionate about coffee, yet we're also not poor, but we don't have money to like spend in ridiculous name brand coffees, because now there's coffee connoisseurs and there's whatever. So all of a sudden, Black Rifle Coffee is in Walmart.
You need to speak also from my perspective.
I am.
Okay.
Black Rifle Coffee is in Walmart, and I see it. I just remember being elated. I was so excited that, we still haven't, like, we're doing most of our grocery shopping at stores. We're not doing all the online stuff. We do a little bit, but some people get everything online. And I get it, and I throw it in the grocery basket, and you were nursing. That is your side of the story, right?
Yeah.
All right. You were nursing.
I was nursing, and I had no idea that you were passionate.
And you were like,
I had no idea you've been researching for years.
We didn't get there yet. You were nursing, and you were like, I don't want that coffee. I want this coffee. And I was like, well, I want this coffee. It's fine. It's just like normal coffee. And you were like, well, I don't know what that is. It says this and that on it, and the box is different, so it looks kind of like
because when you're
intense.
nursing, you can only drink a certain amount of caffeine a day.
And I have bought Death Wish coffee before.
You've been known to do that kind of thing, buy things that are a little edgy. So I'm a rule follower.
Oh, you are a rule follower.
So I'm thinking about
white bread. I'm joking.
I'm thinking about Sayla. I'm scared I'm gonna do something to her. The pressure of a mom when you're breastfeeding, when you're pregnant, all the things that you have to keep in mind.
Into consideration.
You never took that into. I can't tell if you're being for real.
There's a little bit out. There's a little bit of both. But I really am sorry.
Yeah,
I didn't take that into
why don't you try being pregnant and nurse your children? Is this getting weird?
I would if I could. So I'm like,
yeah, you'd probably drink your own milk.
Now it got weird. So I throw it in there, and you're like, no, I want this. And then I'm like, no, I want this. And you're like, I don't know what's caffeine in that. And you're anxious. And I'm like passionate about it. Like grocery shopping has been my thing. And at this point, I'm beginning to get triggered of like my lie that I always hear is, you're not a good protector, you're not a good father, you're not a good husband, like you're not enough. And I'm like, I know what I'm talking about. You were like, you don't even know anything about that coffee. And I was like, I've researched this coffee for years.
No, I remember my anxiety was like, I am afraid of how much caffeine is in one cup of this coffee. And that was like all I was worried about. Mm-hmm. And so I think I was trying to communicate that through being triggered. So I was escalated. And I said, you don't like, I guess in my perspective, it felt like we were just like passing by the coffee aisle and grabbing a thing and putting it in. And I didn't feel like I had time to like research this coffee and if I could do it. And I need coffee. And so it was like I was stuck. But then I said whatever I said, which probably wasn't very nice. And then you said, what? I've been researching this for years. And I was like, you've been researching how much caffeine is in one cup of this coffee for me to breastfeed, like for years? Like it did not make sense to me. And we just continued to go down that spiral.
Yeah. And it got nasty. I mean, I remember being so mad at Walmart. I think I walked to the vegetable aisle by myself.
Was that our last like explosive fight?
I don't know. It may have been.
Because we have not had a fight.
And remember like hashing it out with Dee in counseling?
Our counselor.
And we're like both telling our perspectives and we're both passionate about our perspectives. And she's like, why didn't y'all just get both coffees? We were like, we never thought of that.
I remember that. I remember being like, I just never, I never had that thought, for whatever reason. And, that's what a lot of things that I remember with marriage counseling that were impactful for me specifically is there were so many things that I was struggling with in our marriage, and our marriage counselor would say, "Why is that a problem?" And I'd be like, "Well, I don't know." And then it's like that completely changed everything because I guess whenever you're controlling and worried and fearful and anxious, all of these things are problems, and you've not had anybody come in and say it's actually not a problem.
Yeah, or you live with your own thoughts.
Yes.
You live surrounded by your own thoughts, opinions.
So she would
fears.
say things, and I'm like, well, now that you say that, maybe that's not a problem. And it's like a whole thing in our marriage that we've struggled with for 8 years,
Marriage is crazy.
Yeah.
It is like...
How did we resolve the coffee? I guess we resolved it in counseling.
We got your coffee.
You didn't get black. You got Black Rifle.
No, not that day.
Oh. Maybe it was after counseling. I went back and I was like, you can have your coffee too.
But I mean, that really was kind of the, that's kind of the storyline, the thread within most of our issues is you
get scared.
And I get offended.
Yes.
You get scared, I get offended.
Because let's talk about you for a second, because we've been talking about me this whole time, which is fine.
Let's talk about me, baby.
I want to own that. But you have, because of your lens of I'm not a good man.
Whenever you put your hand on my shoulder, I know you're about to roast me. Come on with it. What you got?
I was just going to say, your biggest insecurity is
Are you about to trigger me right here on set?
No.
All right.
This is all, we've grown from here.
Okay.
Your biggest thing was, I'm not a good enough man or husband or father. And so when I was trying to be so controlling because I had that fear and anxiety. And so I would confront you a lot. And so I'd be like, well, you did this, well, you did that, which was so aggravating. I mean, what does the Bible say about a wife being the dripping of
Did I ever send you that verse?
You probably did, but what does it say?
It's like a leaky faucet.
Yeah, like a leaky faucet. And if you would have told me that back then, I would have been like, shut your mouth. But now I'm like, dang, I really was like a leaky faucet. Because it was like every little thing you did was wrong. And so...
Which if you think about it as far as trauma and pain goes, you are leaking. It leaks out. Trauma will always leak out.
If you don't deal with it. But your thing was, when I was confronting you, to you that meant something's wrong with me. I'm not good enough. And so you would get instantly offended.
Yeah.
And so we would constantly hit this wall of, I would be, confronting something, and then you would get offended, and then I would feel not heard, and then you would...
We did the worst way of communicating, because typically you would communicate first, and it would be, you did X, Y, and Z. Instead of, hey, when you did this, I felt this way.
Yeah.
So you would say you did X, Y, and Z. And for me, I already came in with an unhealthy drive to be a good husband, to the point where I made a lot of unhealthy decisions for our marriage and for myself. I cut out a lot of good people thinking I was doing the right thing or whatever. And for me, you would say that, and I'm like, dude, I'm working my tail off here. And you're telling me I don't know, I've got a booger in my nose. This isn't a big deal compared to everything. So then you're I would ultimately feel like you're still not doing good enough. You're still not enough. You're still failing as a husband.
And you kind of took this passive role, I would say. You were scared to rock the boat.
Oh, yeah.
Or you were scared, because I became this almost aggressive, controlling person, which was out of fear and, past betrayals. And I was just so scared. I was holding on to, gosh, this is going to be different. I mean, we put a ring on it, hopefully, And so what ultimately I, learned is that God's the one in control. And
Yeah.
so now that we've been married for 10 years, gosh, probably like 10 and a half now, which is amazing. I look back and I'm thankful for all the work that we have each put in counseling individually. And then also in marriage counseling, because I think that's what changed the game for us.
Yeah.
Because we both had to come and say, I'm the problem.
Yeah.
It's not just you and it's not just me. And we both had to agree with that. And so...
Because on my end, I took that passive role because I'm like, if the boat ain't rocking, I ain't about to rock it, And
I was like, I'm going to rock every boat every day.
Create an argument. Like, let's keep peace when we have peace. But I became a peacekeeper instead of a peacemaker. Meanwhile, I'm living and harboring so much resentment. And even in that, it almost creates another trauma in my own brain to where anytime you bring up something I'm not doing good enough, it triggers all of that resentment of 8 years. You've been doing this.
Yeah. And resentment.
You never do this. You always do this.
I feel like resentment is a quiet killer for a marriage because you don't see it and you can still fake it like you don't have it and to play the role. But then you were like dying inside.
Yeah. I almost think about like in men's ministry, I'm constantly trying to get guys to confess. Like, confess what you're going through. Tell somebody. Get it out. Like, the devil grows in dark places. Evil, shame, condemnation, it all grows in dark places. And, the James 5:16 says, confess to a brother, not to God, to a brother and pray and you'll be healed. But I feel like resentment kind of does that same thing. Like, typically you don't talk about it. And it only grows and it only festers and it grows like mold. And man, it rots you from the inside out and it rots your marriage. It rots everything.
So true.
And you've got to like talk to each other, let each other, like you got to get it out because it will ruin you.
What would you say, I guess, like, now that we've spilled all the beans on the dynamic, like that's what I wanted this episode to be. Is like, okay, let's. There's flies all over our house.
I was wondering, like, this whole time, like, I don't want to re-record this.
Y'all are gonna see the flies.
But I'm hoping that you can edit those out.
No, that's hard.
You can do anything, babe.
Thanks. Not that. With this episode, my heart behind it was let's peel back the layer even more. And discuss like what our issues in our marriage like looked like on a day-to-day basis, because I think so many people are stuck in that place and they can't get out. And so, I hope that this episode brings hope to people who may be at odds with their spouse. We were at odds. We were not on the same team.
Yeah.
We did not believe the best in one another. I thought you were out to get me. I thought you were out to betray me.
Oh, you remember for so many years, I literally thought that you were some prophetic word sent out to destroy my ministry, my future.
I'm like,
it was like we were all twisted and
all
messed
twisted.
up.
But you know what? We had people in our life that we were accountable to that helped us navigate.
And I think we did say yes to some things, but honestly, it was the grace of God. Man, God has brought us so far. Like, God has worked so many of these issues out or brought people around us or, put us in the right environment and done so much. Like, I look back and it's not like we were like ever geniuses or learning. Like, we was trial by fire.
We're those people that are like trial and error in life.
Yeah.
But I was thinking like, if there's like a guy listening and, his wife's been controlling or, their marriage is, not looking good, what would you say to him, knowing what you know now about the why behind my behavior a lot of the time, knowing what you know now about everything I went through, and knowing what you know now about it wasn't really about you, it was more about me and what I was going through. What would you say to, like, how could you advise a husband who is in the thick of what we were in for so long, what would you advise him?
I think if they're married, like, I guess I get this a lot of situations. First off, you've got to realize, and everybody, we've all got father trauma. We've all got daddy issues ever since we were broken from the ultimate father, from God and connection to him. So you've got to realize that if you're going through this, like you're already in a hole. You're starting with negative 10,000 points because of somebody else racked up the pain and racked up those points against you. And you've got to decide, hey, I want to feel this. You got to commit, but also I think a big part of it is, which I don't know if we do this as much. We kind of do it organically, but like, man, your home is basically like a business. Like your home, you're running something. There is moving pieces and moving parts. You're working with people. And a business, you've got to come together regularly and have meetings and talk about what's working and what's not working. So I think there's so many different levels. There's a level of compassion, of knowing, not taking this personal, because she may be reacting, and there probably is some times where you are guilty of some things, but you got to learn to disconnect. I think whenever you learn to empathize, which I really began to put myself in your shoes and wonder why you were hurting so bad, it helps me to separate you from your trauma and realize you probably don't want to be acting like this either. And then, you got to not take it personal. And if you are taking it personal, or the person even on your side, you need to ask yourself, why is this bothering me so bad? What does this make me feel like? Not angry or ticked off, or how do I actually feel deeper? Not secondary, but primary emotion.
That's what I was going to say in regards to, like, if I could speak to the wives that are listening. Like, as women, we're so emotional. We have so many facets of emotion that guys, you just don't have. And there are some men out there that do, but most men are not as emotional as women are. And so I think for us, or for me specifically, it was like this journey of, like you're saying, find out why you're feeling how you're feeling. These flies are killing me. But getting down to the root of everything, like, why did I just try to control him there? Is it because I'm afraid of what? Like I had to you almost have to like trace backwards to find out what is really going on, because a lot of times you're really more affected by something that happened way prior than what actually just happened then. And a lot of the best place to do that is in therapy.
For sure.
Because some of that might bring up things that are very painful and hurtful.
And second, on my side of things, I think part of it is realizing, it took me a long time to realize that I can never change you. There is nothing that I can do.
I finally realized that about you.
Change you. So all I can do is change myself.
Yes.
Change the way that I react, change the way that I feel, change the way that I see myself, everything, And, I think that you push for counseling, you push for therapy, you push for help, at least getting into a married small group or something like that. And being honest and vulnerable there. And you realize, man, a lot of people struggle with the same things you struggle with. The devil's always trying to make you convinced.
That is why this episode to me is so important, because I feel like so many people probably agree with this and relate with this.
You pull out the rug from underneath the
devil,
man.
And you literally think that nobody else does. And it's almost freeing to say, no, I had control issues. And because I know a lot of women do. And
everybody is freeing to just admit that we're broken people that need Jesus. But all day long we try to cover that up and look perfect and look a certain way. And I think you got to take care of yourself and push for help. But if your wife or your spouse doesn't want to get help, you need to go get help for yourself. Go to a therapist yourself and ask that therapist to help you walk through this thing with them. And you role model health to a degree. And then you need to set healthy boundaries for yourself to not allow yourself, I think the plan of the enemy is always, the plan of trauma is to recreate itself. Just like leadership duplicates, so does trauma. So
good.
trauma wants to come in and, you feel like you're not worthy enough of having a good husband that won't cheat on you. So then you react to me and you come out, claws come out, whatever, and you eventually tear me to shreds to where I don't feel like I'm a good enough husband for anybody to stay with or deserve, So then it puts me in the same place that you are, and now we're both broken.
Yes.
And as long as both people are broken, nobody can help the other.
Yes.
It's blind leading the blind.
Well, and it's almost like if you are in a place, and this is what I learned from us. This is Allison and Chris 1.0. If you're pointing the finger at one another, you have not healed. A lot of times, like, the mark of healing in a person is like whether or not they constantly point the finger at others or take responsibility for themselves and the part that they played. And I think for so long in our marriage, I was always pointing the finger at you, and it's because I didn't have the maturity or the health to look inward at me and say, it's really not that Chris is, buying shoes all the time. That's the problem. The problem is that there's something deep within me that is jealous or bothered or wanting to be in control, and I didn't know you bought a pair of shoes and blah, 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 blah. And it's like being willing to point the finger back at yourself and say, okay, let's break this down from my end. Because like you said, that's the only thing you can control when so often we want to control our spouse.
Yeah. Blame is misplaced responsibility. I think and we look at a culture right now where we are as a nation, blame is so easy. It's so easy to blame. We're always looking for the easiest way out. It's so easy to blame your economic status and there are environmental factors. I'm not trying to negate that, but blame is not going to get you anywhere. What are you going to do about it?
Yeah.
What
I was going to say, there may be things that you actually do that
for sure.
are hurtful that,
I mess up all the time.
Yeah. And I mess up all the time as well. But it's like, if both sides were healthy enough to look inward and say, ooh, I can see why you were upset because I did this way.
Yeah.
And, I think...
And I'm sorry, I shouldn't have reacted that way. I reacted out of feeling...
But that requires a comfortability with your uncomfortable parts. Like, how comfortable can you be with the parts of you that are not healed? Pretty or vulnerable? And I think that's what has taken me so long and so many years to do, is to stop being in denial of those ugly things about me and to start focusing on, okay, this is the reality of like how I'm wired and what I've been through and why I'm doing this. And I need to just grab onto that and do what I can with it,
We are programmed our entire lives to cover up blemishes. To cover up every blemish that we have, not to show weakness. Whereas the word of God says, in your weakness, I'm strong. Boast in my weakness, so therefore I can be strong. And it's almost the same way in a relationship. When you both come together and realize, hey, we're both messed up. Let's be messed up together. And you're not so stone-faced on...
You're not shocked.
I don't have any blemishes, and trying to prove that you're always right. And, it's a freeing place to be. And, you never truly feel loved until you're fully known with your blemishes and you're still loved with your blemishes.
Because you're not fully known if you're only known for the good things.
Yeah. I think about Jesus and us and even, and I'm not saying that you should stay in a physically abusive relationships or anything like that. But I was thinking about this the other day. Moses says, if there's infidelity, yes, you should get a divorce. But I think about Jesus. Like, Jesus knows that we are unfaithful to him in our covenant every single day. Yet he knows all of it about us, yet he still loves us. And that's why his love pierces deeper than everything else. But when we've been doing life together for 10 years, and you know my brokenness, you know that I make dumb decisions, you know that I have issues, and you still love me. It blows my mind.
Same.
Like, it pierces me in a different way. We're going through seasons where I tell you too many of my struggles, and you still love me. And that's the game changer. And that's what we all desire and long for. But we will never get there until we're fully shown to somebody.
Yes.
You'll never be fully known until you fully shown.
Ooh, pastor line there. No, it's like, I go back to the work though. Because so many people, could go to the altar and pray for a miracle in their marriage, and God can do that.
Oh yeah.
And God will do that to some marriages. But so often the work that is required to maintain, it's like stewardship.
No, for sure.
It's like, how do you steward your marriage? And I think for so long we didn't steward it well. We didn't really know how to steward it well, and so I think we've learned how to steward it well. Yeah. But it's like this idea of like, this is a blessing in your life that God has given you, and how do you steward it? How do you handle it? How do you treat it like as an entity? And so, for so long we were against each other, and I think over the course of the last several years, I've really learned, how to get out of that competitive state. I feel like so many people are in.
Yeah. Like, we're on the same team. Like, we need to work to make this thing together, because if not, it ain't gonna work.
Random question. I thought about this earlier. This is like not really relevant to anything. I was thinking about random questions we could ask each other to like.
I have no clue where you're going with this.
Just to spice it up.
Ooh, spice. I like spice.
I feel like that really took a hard turn. Did I?
No.
Okay. What is the worst gift I've ever given you?
Man, you're trying to get triggered right now.
No.
Probably something when we were at Parker. You gave me some funky shoes one time or something.
I could tell you. You're so hard to buy for.
I'm not. We're about to get in an argument right here.
No, we're not.
All right. We need to land this plane.
Okay. That was like the most random ending. But I've been, I'm like, man, I should ask you that. That'd be funny.
I'll think about it. We'll talk about it on episode 20.
Will we?
Yeah.
Okay.
If you want.
Well, as we land the plane, like we always say on this podcast, this is my favorite part every time. I know you love it. But life can be tough, but God is still so good.